You think driving an automatic is safe, easy, and worry-free? That's a big mistake. Inside that transmission is a complex system, and even one small bad habit can cost you thousands of dollars in repairs. Many drivers keep doing things they think are harmless every day, then wonder why their transmission gives up early. In this video, I'll show you 6 habits that destroy automatic transmissions the fastest, explain exactly why each one causes damage, and tell you how to avoid them so your transmission can last like new. Take 3 seconds to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. One, shifting into low gear, L or 2, while driving fast. A lot of drivers still have the habit of moving the shifter into L or 2 when going downhill to use engine braking. That works for manual cars, but for automatics, it's a silent killer. When the car's moving fast and you force it into a low gear, the RPMs shoot up, the torque flow reverses abruptly, and the entire planetary gear set, clutch packs, and brake bands inside the transmission take a sudden shock load far beyond what they're designed for. The transmission fluid overheats quickly. Friction spikes, and just a few times of doing that can burn the clutch linings, leading to slipping or harsh shifting later on. Modern automatics don't work like manuals. They're controlled by a network of hydraulic circuits and sensors that calculate the right shift timing based on speed, incline, and throttle input. If you force the lever into L or 2 at high speed, the ECU will try to delay the downshift to protect the transmission. But if the speed hasn't dropped enough and the command is still held, hydraulic pressure suddenly spikes, overloading the clutch packs. When that happens, the fluid darkens and smells burnt, a clear sign of overheating and friction damage. If you don't change the fluid in time, the repair bill can easily hit several $1,000s, all from a few wrong shifts. Some people think doing this helps the car grip better and saves the brakes. In reality, it's the opposite. Engine braking that's too aggressive sends a sudden deceleration force to the wheels, throwing off the car's balance, especially on wet roads or when carrying heavy loads. Even a small skid can make you lose control. Newer vehicles already have an automatic downshift feature that detects when you're going downhill and gently slows the car without mechanical shock to the transmission. If you really need to shift down, do it gradually, only after the speed has dropped significantly. Go from D to 3 to 2 to L and keep the engine speed below 4,000 RPM. If the car jerks hard or the engine starts screaming, that's your cue to shift back to D. This method protects the transmission and keeps the car stable on long downhill drives. In my garage, I've seen plenty of transmissions fail just because of this habit. Cars come in with fluid as black as burnt coffee, slipping clutches, and damaged valve bodies. The owners always say they were doing the right thing to stay safe on slopes, when in fact, they were just shortening their transmission's life. An automatic is built to run smoothly on its own. It doesn't need to be forced or manually controlled. The driver's job is simple: maintain a safe speed, drive gently, and let the system do what it was designed to do. So, when your car's moving fast, never force the shifter into L or 2. Remember, automatic transmissions don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they're misused. Every wrong shift overheats the fluid, wears out the clutches, and little by little, shortens the life of the whole system without you even realizing it. 2. Shifting to neutral at a red light. Many drivers still believe that when stopping at a red light, shifting the gear lever to N, neutral, helps the car rest, reduces stress on the transmission, and saves fuel. It sounds logical, but in reality, the opposite is true. This habit doesn't make the transmission work less. It actually makes it work more, in subtle ways that you might not notice right away. When the car is in D, drive, and you're holding the brake, the torque converter is still spinning, but only a tiny amount of torque is transmitted. The transmission fluid keeps circulating, cooling, and lubricating the internal parts, and the whole system stays in balance. The hydraulic pressure remains steady. The clutch packs stay lubricated, and the transmission is ready to engage the moment you release the brake. But when you shift to N, the hydraulic flow and pressure inside the system change abruptly. Some drivers also think shifting to N saves fuel. However, in modern cars, the ECU is already programmed to automatically adjust fuel injection when the vehicle stops. While in D, with the brake applied, the idle speed drops to around 600-700 RPM, using only a few thousandths of a gallon per minute. Shifting to N doesn't save any measurable amount of fuel. In fact, some cars slightly increase idle speed in neutral, which means fuel consumption can be a bit higher. The difference is almost zero. Others worry that keeping the car in D for too long strains the transmission or overheats the fluid. But in reality, the load at that time is extremely low, just a few percent of what it is while driving. The only thing that really wears out is your brake foot, not the transmission. And if you're stopped for several minutes, like in heavy traffic, the best solution is to shift to P, apply the parking brake, or simply turn off the engine. That's both safer and truly fuel efficient. It's also worth noting that many modern transmissions feature auto hold or creep control systems that automatically disengage torque when the car remains stopped for a while, then re-engage it when you release the brake. In other words, the car is already designed to handle this situation intelligently. Manually shifting to N doesn't help. It actually disrupts how the system is meant to operate. Many owners start to notice small issues over time, such as delayed gear engagement, a light jolt when shifting into D, or a faint clunk sound when going from N to D. These are the consequences of unnecessary gear changes at the wrong moments. Automatic transmissions are built to operate smoothly and consistently, not to be switched back and forth constantly just because the driver thinks it saves fuel. 3. Shifting to park while the car is still moving. Some drivers have the habit of shifting into P, park, while the car is still rolling slowly, especially when pulling into a parking spot or stopping on a slope. This seemingly harmless move is one of the fastest ways to wear out an automatic transmission. Inside the transmission is a small component called the parking pawl, a metal pin that locks into a gear on the output shaft to hold the car still when parked. This mechanism only works safely when the shaft has completely stopped. If the wheels are still turning, even just a few miles per hour, that pole tries to engage with a moving gear, creating a violent impact. The result? A broken pawl, chipped gear teeth, or even an instant wheel lockup. Modern cars have sensors to prevent this, but they aren't always perfect. Even a half-second delay can still cause serious mechanical shock. When the pawl is damaged, you'll often hear a clunk when shifting gears, or the shifter may get stuck every time you try to leave P. In worse cases, the transmission can get jammed in park, requiring disassembly and repair, often costing between $1,000 and $3,000. Plenty of owners have had to rebuild their transmission just because of one rushed shift. Some people think shifting to P early helps stop the car faster if the brakes are weak. That's a dangerous misconception. Park is not a brake. It was never designed to stop a moving car. If you need to slow down in an emergency, use the brake pedal, engage the parking brake, or downshift gradually. Never use P to hold the car back. The correct way is simple. Stop the car completely with the brake pedal, engage the parking brake, then shift into P. Doing it in this order lets the parking brake bear the car's weight instead of the fragile pawl. This keeps the transmission relaxed, the fluid stable, and the drivetrain free from shock. It may sound like a small detail, but the consequences are huge. An automatic transmission can last hundreds of thousands of miles, but just a few wrong shifts into P at the wrong time can ruin it. So no matter how rushed you are, even if you're just a few inches from your parking spot, remember this rule. Only shift to park when the car has completely stopped. It's a small habit that can save you from one of the most expensive mistakes an automatic driver can make. Subscribe to the channel to get notified about new videos. 4. Shifting to neutral while going downhill. Many drivers still believe that shifting to N, neutral, while driving downhill helps the car roll more smoothly and saves fuel. It sounds logical. No throttle, no load, the car just coasts. But in reality, this is one of the most dangerous and counterproductive driving habits. When the car is in neutral, the transmission is disconnected from the engine, meaning you lose all control over engine braking. At that point, the only thing keeping your speed in check is the brake pedal. That also means if your brakes overheat or fade midway down a hill, there's nothing left to hold the car back. On long downhill slopes, brake overheating is very common. The brake fluid boils, the pads lose grip, and the pedal starts to feel soft. Once that happens, you can't rely on engine braking anymore, and the car basically free falls down the hill. A lot of people also think this method saves gas, but in modern vehicles, the ECU already cuts fuel injection during downhill coasting. When the car is in D and you lift off the gas, the ECU shuts off fuel flow completely, letting the wheels spin the engine, so fuel consumption is almost zero. If you shift to N, however, the engine must keep idling to stay running, which actually burns a small amount of fuel. So not only is it unsafe, it's less efficient. There's another risk: slow response time when you need to accelerate suddenly. If you're rolling downhill in neutral and need to avoid an obstacle or pass another car, shifting back into D takes time, and it hits the transmission hard. Switching from a free-rolling state to full load creates a mechanical shock. On older cars, this sudden engagement can cause clutch slip or a loud clunk, eventually leading to wear or internal damage. In many U.S. states, driving downhill in neutral is actually illegal because it's considered loss of vehicle control. Police can issue a citation if they see a vehicle coasting downhill in N. The reason is simple. The driver no longer has the ability to accelerate or react quickly in an emergency. The right way is to keep the car in D, lift your foot off the gas, and let the engine provide natural braking. If you need better speed control, you can manually downshift to 3 or 2, but only after your speed has dropped enough. This keeps the car stable, prevents the brakes from overheating, and ensures you stay fully in control. 5. Switching between drive and reverse before coming to a complete stop. This is a mistake many automatic drivers make every single day without realizing it, shifting from D to R or R to D before the car has fully stopped. It usually happens in common situations: backing out of a parking space, the car still rolling slightly, and the driver impatiently flips the shifter straight into drive to move forward. The car still moves fine, so people assume it's harmless. But every time you do that, you're hitting the transmission with a mechanical shock you can't see or feel right away. An automatic transmission relies on clutch packs and brake bands. When switching from reverse to drive, these clutches must completely stop the torque spinning in one direction before reversing it. If the car is still moving, the hydraulic pressure hasn't stabilized yet, and the clutches end up taking the braking load, a job they're not designed for. The sudden friction creates heat, burns the clutch linings slightly, and wears them out a bit each time. Do this often, and you'll start noticing the transmission slipping, jerking during shifts, or making a soft clunk sound when engaging gears. Many customers come into the shop saying the same thing. My car still drives fine. It just jerks a little when shifting into D. When we check, the transmission fluid is dark and smells burnt, a clear sign of clutch damage. Fixing it isn't cheap. A full transmission rebuild can cost $2,000 to $4,000, all from saving a few seconds each day. The correct method is simple. Always let the car come to a complete stop before changing directions. When backing up, press the brake until the car fully stops, wait a second, then shift into D. That short pause gives the hydraulic system time to balance pressure and allows the clutches to disengage before taking a load in the opposite direction. The result? Smoother shifts, no jerks, and a much longer transmission lifespan. Remember, the brakes are designed to handle stopping. The transmission isn't. When you use the gearbox to hold or stop the car, you're forcing it to do a job it was never meant for, wearing it out 10 times faster. Most newer cars have sensors that prevent shifting between D and R while the car is still moving, but these systems don't always react fast enough. 6. Launching your car in neutral. One of the so-called cool but destructive habits many drivers, especially younger ones, still practice is launching the car by revving the engine in N, neutral, and then slamming it into D, drive. This move is often called a neutral drop. You rev the engine in neutral to raise the RPMs, then shift straight into drive so the car shoots forward like a rocket. The tire squeal might sound exciting, but inside the transmission, that's the single most violent mechanical shock it can experience. An automatic transmission works through a torque converter, multiple clutch packs, and brake bands. When you rev the engine in N, the engine spins freely while the transmission is disconnected from the drivetrain. The moment you shift into D, all that rotational force from the engine is suddenly dumped into stationary gears. The result? The clutch packs slip violently. Friction skyrockets, heat builds up in seconds, and the transmission fluid overheats almost instantly. Under extreme pressure, the clutch linings begin to burn, creating carbon deposits and shortening the transmission's life right away. Many people think doing it a few times won't hurt anything. In reality, just one neutral drop can crack the clutch hub, damage the torque converter, or bend the drive shaft. That's why many repair shops in the US have seen transmissions completely locked up, unable to shift, simply because the owner wanted to try it for fun. Open the transmission, and you'll find burnt black fluid, shredded clutches, and metal shavings scattered everywhere. Besides mechanical damage, this move also strains the engine and axles, since all the inertia from the engine is slammed into the drivetrain at once. On older vehicles, that impact can cause severe jerking, broken joints, or even snapped drive shafts. And the repair bill? Easily over $3,000, sometimes requiring a full transmission replacement. If you want a stronger launch, do it the right way. Hold the brake pedal while lightly pressing the gas in D to build pressure inside the torque converter. When you release the brake, the power transfers smoothly, the clutches are already engaged, and the transmission doesn't slip. This method, called brake torque, is far safer and still gives you a powerful start. An automatic transmission doesn't fail because it's weak. It fails because it's misused. Small habits like coasting downhill in N, shifting between D and R before stopping, or launching from neutral all quietly eat away at its internal components. Every harsh jolt and rushed shift adds another crack to your car's lifespan. Driving properly doesn't just make your car last longer and shift smoother, it saves you thousands in repair costs. That's what smart driving really means. Did this video help you out? Hit subscribe and help us reach 20,000 subscribers.